So last weekend, I was over on Twitch drawing some Pokemon fusions, and I was working on this fusion of Skuntank and Charizard. And then a viewer suggested that we name it Skunkazard, which on the surface is a good name, but I just couldn't bring myself to use it. And that's because Skuntank does not have that middle K. It really bothers me when people pronounce it Skunk Tank. And then another viewer said that their dad pronounces Venonat Venomnat, and you know, that's just one of my pet peeves, people who pronounce the names wrong because they're just not reading it right. And you know, if you have dyslexia or something like that and you just can't read it right, that's one thing, but that's not most people's cases. And it just got me thinking about my other Pokemon pet peeves. So I hope that you will share some of your pet peeves down in the comments. These are some of mine. On the flip side of that pronunciation thing, another pet peeve of mine is people who jump on other people for mispronouncing Pokemon names or pronouncing them in a way that isn't like the official pronunciation. I think that as long as you're saying it in a way that matches the way that it's written, that matches the letters in the actual name, it should be fine. You can pronounce it Giratina or Giratina or Giratina, you can say Mantine or Mantine, and it doesn't matter. Even if the way you're saying it doesn't match the root words. In English, there are many words that have the same root, but different pronunciations, or even the same word with the same meaning can have multiple accepted pronunciations. Think of words like inquiry or inquiry, or even as simple as tomato and tomato. And you know what? Even in official media, some pronunciations of the names have changed. So you know what? Say it however you want. Let other people say it however they want, as long as you're not saying it's skunk tank. Wooper is not an axolotl. Axolotl is a specific species of salamander that matures without going through metamorphosis, so it never loses the external gills. Wooper, however, does undergo metamorphosis when it evolves into Quagsire, and it does lose the external gills. Any immature salamander has the external gills, so Wooper is probably just whatever the same species of salamander that Quagsire is supposed to be, which is probably a giant salamander. But you know what? Actually, no, scratch that, because another pet peeve of mine is people treating Pokemon as if they are the animals that they are based on. It's one thing to say that Pyroar is a lion as a sort of shorthand way of saying that Pyroar is based on a lion, or that it shares many traits with a lion, and that's fine. But the fact is that Pyroar is not a lion. Pyroar is a Pokemon. Pokemon are not the animals that they are based on. They don't have to follow the same rules. Fish Pokemon, for example, if they were actual fish, they wouldn't be able to breathe out of the water. But that doesn't seem to be a problem because they are not fish. Or Remoraid, a fish, turning into Octillery, an octopus. Very different kinds of animals, but they are actually not a fish and an octopus. They are a Pokemon that looks like a fish and an octopus. That said, though, I do think that the way that Pokemon move need to make sense, especially if they are based on real animals. Between Let's Go and Sword and Shield, we've been seeing more and more Pokemon moving about in the overworld, and some Pokemon just don't move very naturally at all. For example, it's weird to see Braviary flapping its wings so much when it's an eagle and it looks like it should just glide for most of the time. But the one that really bothers me is Butterfree and other similar Pokemon. Because they are positioned vertically, they are flapping their wings in the wrong direction. Flapping like this is not going to give you lift or propulsion. You're not going to be able to move forward. It was less bad when you saw them like this in battle, because in battle they were just static, they were just flying in place. But now that we actually see them roaming and flapping like this, that's not going to work. It feels so wrong. Ghost Pokemon are not dead. They can breed and make eggs. You know, I thought of doing a Pokestudies on this topic, but they can breed. That should be all the evidence you need. A Ghastly can breed with a very much a living creature, Gardevoir, for example. And you know what? Ghost Pokemon probably don't carry children away or kill so many people that they have a freaking mass graveyard under them. Those are just creepypastas or boogeyman stories, you know, the kinds of stories you tell kids to keep them in line. But that does lead into another pet peeve of mine, people who take the theories or the legends of the Pokemon world as fact. The characters in the games tell us all kinds of weird stuff, and a lot of fans just read it and go, yeah, okay. For For example, with Mega Evolution, the idea that it requires a bond between the Pokemon and their trainer, or that the Mega Stones were created by the ultimate weapon. But as we talked about last week, those were Sycamore's hypotheses, his theories, not something confirmed. And we do the same things with the legends and the myths, like with Arceus creating the world, or with Ho-Oh reviving the beasts of Johto, or even with Mew being the ancestor to all Pokemon. Here's another one. Characters rarely have both a given name and a surname or family name. And this is something that bothers me about some other franchises as well, and I think there are two problems with it. First, it feels weird when people who should be on a first name basis only use surnames, or vice versa. So for example, in the past it's been established that the professors' names are surnames. For example, Samuel Oak. Although, now that I think about it, I don't think Samuel was in the games at all. I think it was only introduced in the anime. But anyways, they were surnames. So when you see Kukui and Burnett using those names for each other, it feels weird because they're supposed to be husband and wife. And second, it prevents characters from having the same name, which can be weird when it comes to very common names. So Bill, for example, we already have a Bill, so we can't have another. Whereas if characters had both a given name and a surname, that would be fine. We could have a Bill Nye and a Bill Gates and a Bill Shakespeare. I've been reading some Pokemon fact fiction recently, and something that's bothered me is that even when the story doesn't take place in anime canon, the depictions of the Pokemon often skew anime. So, for example, Pokemon say their own names, which is a huge pet peeve of mine because I hate it even in the anime and I wish it had never happened. But also, the Pokemon are often given a degree of personality and of intelligence that seems on par with the human characters. So, for example, in this one story, a character gives her Meganium a complex set of instructions, and then the Meganium nods and then goes to do exactly what it was told. But if you look at dogs, for example, you can't just give a complex set of instructions unless you've specifically trained for those instructions. And even if the dog or the Meganium could understand exactly what you were saying, they wouldn't nod in agreement. Their body language, their way of communicating within themselves is very different. So I would prefer to see some more exploration of Pokemon body language, whether that's based on their reference animals or even something totally original. Well, I hope that you have left some of your pet peeves in the comments. I look forward to reading them so we can complain and be angry together. But if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like. You can subscribe if you're new here. And if you want to support my work in other ways, you can follow me or even subscribe on Twitch. You can join my Patreon, or you can buy some merch. I did change suppliers recently, but the merch is the same. I'm Umbreon Libris. I'll see you in the next chapter. Those were Sycamore's hypotheses, his theories, not something confirmed.
He's wrong anyways.
He is wrong anyway.